You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning. I'm here with Jon Kerstetter. What should I call you? Colonel?
Doc.
Doc?
Everybody just calls me Doc.
Just call you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I recently met you at, we had a men's leadership meeting at Hodges Barn here locally, and I'd never heard you speak, and a good friend of mine said, you need to hear Jon talk. He's got quite a story. And the interesting thing about stories is everybody has a story. Well, you certainly have a unique story. So, when I skim through the book, if you think you're having a bad day, read this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
or a series of bad days.
Yeah.
Read this book. So anyway, I'm really, really excited for you to be here. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And all the things that you've done. And let's just start from the beginning. If you want to talk about your family, I know you have Native American heritage.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, up in Green Bay, right?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
Oneida?
Oneida, Wisconsin. Oneida tribe of Indians in Wisconsin.
Okay, and then talk about that, and then injuries as a child. And
sure.
And then we'll just get through medicine and a doctor's soldier story.
Yeah, let me take it. So
okay,
my mom was full-blood Oneida Indian, and everybody on her side, of course, was. I was born in 1950 on the reservation. And it was a difficult time because we're having economic hard times. It's rough on everybody.
Right.
But if you live on a reservation, it's equally demanding.
Yeah.
So I find this out years later when I'm in high school. She decides she's going to take her 3 children, she's a single parent, off the reservation in order to survive. She gets a job in an Indian boarding school in Utah, Intermountain Indian School. And off we go. She packs up her 3 kids, 2 suitcases. I remember I had a little tiny suitcase about the size of a lunchbox, and off we go.
How old were you?
Oh, I was 5 years old. So I'm 5. We have my brother's 5 years older than me, and the sister's about 10 years older than I am. Off we go. And she's, like a mom with 3 little ducks. And we're going to Utah. Of course, she'd never been to Utah. She's never been anywhere out there. Leaves her family, leaves her friends. She doesn't have a house. She's on a tiny rented apartment on the reservation. So she moves out there and she gets her job. She doesn't drive. And we get an apartment that's in the back of a gas station. And the owner operator had done fairly well, and he decided, well, he's got 3 kids. It's time for him to get a house. Mm. So he moved out of his gas station and he had it open. So she said, can I rent it? He said, well, sure. It's, whatever. Could have been $50 a month or $25 for all I know. Couldn't have been very much because she didn't make very much. And she'd walk to work, walk home, walk to work, walk home. And my grandfather came to live with us at the time. Now, he was one of the first cohorts of Indians in America to go to Carlisle Indian School, which is the largest government-run boarding school, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And he didn't have a very good time. While he was there, as a matter of fact, he ran away like the first 3 months. And they caught him. They brought him back. They put him in jail for a month for running away. Mm. And later, I mean much later, like 40 years later, I found out, I dug his school records out of the archives that graduate students are now digging through archives. And I found his record. And it says who he is, where he came from. He was 18 years old. They put him in the 2nd grade. He lasted 1 year. And on his discharge form, it says reason for discharge. There's one word, worthless. Wow. And that's it. So he is now living with us in Utah. And I didn't know any of this, of course, when I was little. He's got to be almost 90 years old. And he used to do 2 things that I remember. One, he'd put me on his right knee, bounce me up and down. He had a pipe in his left hand and a copy of the Bible in the other. Mm. And I didn't, I'm a little kid. I'm 5, 6, 7 years old at the time. I go, this is kind of fun. And he'd let me puff on the pipe once in a while, which I did and turned green. It turned out he was reading Psalm 23. Mm. And he always used to, and I used to slump a little bit when he'd call me over. And he'd say in Oneida language, Satak Walishi, stand up straight. And I would. Now later, I come to understand the full meaning of that word, which I'll talk about later in the podcast. So my mom went to a boarding school. My grandfather went to a boarding school. I was the first kid in our family of 3 to graduate from high school. And my mom would always grab me and say, Johnny, you have got to get an education. The only way to survive. They survived with their hands, with their work, with their labor. But they knew, then the whole reason my mom brought me out there reservation, the whole reason she brought her kids off was to get educated. She said, you got to get an education. I said, I know, I want to be a doctor.
Where did she get that in her mind? Where do you know?
Yeah. Now, my grandfather went to a government boarding school. She went to a Christian boarding school in Wisconsin. And part of the teaching was work and faith. And there's you don't eat bread if you don't work. That's a scriptural principle. You don't work, you don't eat. Right. But she knew that just working with your hands wasn't enough. She saw the writing on the wall that you've got to get an education and it's got to be more than high school. So I said, yes, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a doctor. I used to watch Marcus Welby on TV, okay? And I say, that's me. Yeah. And we used to have a country doctor come to the house with a kit. And he'd give you a shot of penicillin. Yeah, right in the rump, and it burned. And I go, I can do that. Well, interestingly enough, I get to high school, and everybody remembers one or two teachers that kind of pat you on the back and say, you got it. Right. I had one of those. And I told him what I wanted to do. He said, I think you're college material. Now, this is an Indian kid from out of nowhere. Yeah. And the town didn't have that much experience with him before, but he took me under his wing, science teacher, big guy, loving guy. He got me a microscope to borrow, take home. Wasn't supposed to take it home. He let me take it home. He got a set of slides to give me. I took them home. And I looked at every blasted slide. I drew every one. I took him back after a couple of months. He said, what have you been doing? I showed him what I did. And he said, you're going to college. I said, I am? He said, yeah, you are. Now, that's 8th grade.
Wow.
Okay, 7th, 8th grade.
Wow. So you knew at an early age.
I knew. And I got that bug in me. Got to high school, I had the same experience. I had one or two teachers who said, okay, now here's what you got to do. Now, I wasn't all that organized, and I floundered a bit. But I did. I went to college. When I left our house in Brigham City, Utah, to go to University of Utah, my mother put an envelope in my hand, had entire life savings in it, but $300. That bought like one semester. I didn't tell her that, but I said, wow, thank you. And I took off. I went. Now, what's interesting, you declare your major. I said, well, I'm a pre-med major. And the pre-med advisor was a chemistry professor. He said, well, I'll tell you what. He had a big meeting and told all the students in the meeting, he's looking right at me. He said, there's not a one of you going to see the inside of a medical school. And it was just like somebody let the air out of the balloon.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I didn't know any better. So he said, look, if you want to talk to me, sign up. I did. He said, we got an Indian student advisor. Why don't you send me over there? And that guy said, guess what? Indians don't do hard sciences. We do education. I didn't know that. Now what do I do? Yeah. Well, I did flounder, and I floundered bad enough. I didn't go into pre-med. I went into business, got a job with IBM, was successful. What I was IBM was something very interesting. The business environment. What's a pre-med kid doing in a business environment? Learning. I learned. I did the education thing. They said, the only way you make a success of yourself at IBM is through making goals. They had goals for every quarter. Every quarter, I'd write on the top of my goal sheet, what do you want to be? And I'd say, doctor. You're supposed to write, I want to be the number one salesman. So I erased doctor, and I'd turn in number one salesman. And that went on for years. Well,
how long did you work for IBM?
About 3.5, almost 4 years. Yeah, that went on. So I finally said, look, John, obviously the dream's still alive. So I started looking at different ways to pursue it. Ended up at the University of Minnesota pursuing a PhD in business. And part of that business program was I got to pick whatever I wanted to study. So I went over and studied some medical school classes. They actually let me in. And I walked up to my advisor one day and I said, hey, I've had a change of heart. I want to go to medical school. He looked at me, he says, I knew that.
How did you pay for school when you talked about $300 your mother gave you?
Yeah, you know what I did? I worked. I worked every summer. I worked at Jackson Lake Lodge in Wyoming.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
You'd go up, and they hired college kids to go up there for all summer long. So I'd go up there and work. I was a bellhop, a wine steward, this, that, through tips and what we earned, which wasn't much per hour, but all the tips we made pay for an entire year of school. And that's how I made it through undergrad. So it was just pure work. So again, I had the advantage of looking at my mom and grandpa saying, well, it doesn't matter what people call you or what you do or where you're from. You still got to work to make a living. Yeah. And if you're not afraid to work, you can make a living and you can succeed. You can get through whatever's thrown at you. And that's what I did.
So they taught you work ethic, and their mother kept saying, get an education.
Work ethic, get an education, and a faith ethic. There's three things involved there. And, I didn't put that all together when I was young in high school. And there was a singular guy in our high school, a pastor actually at the local Baptist church there. And I managed to find my way into his church and listen to some sermons, with my girlfriend. The first time I heard the gospel, and I said, that's for me. And he was an ex-Marine drill sergeant, so he knew one thing, discipline. Yeah. Discipline. Yeah. And he got a hold of me, and I said, and we talked, and I said, I don't know, I really don't have a father. I don't know what this whole thing's all about. It's kind of different. He said, but you do have a father. Yeah. And actually a better one than you would have had. Yeah. I said, wow. Yeah. And he was the faith part of the community that turned that around for me to help me understand that, I'm really not alone. That if you're with the Lord, if you put your faith in the Lord, there's nothing you can't do. With God, all things are possible, period. And we took it from there. So I graduate business school. I go to work at IBM. I say, I want to go to medical school. I do all the work, take all the, pre-med courses all over again. I do fine. I interview at only two schools, University of Minnesota and the Mayo Clinic. And when I went to interview at Mayo, it was late in the season. There was a bad storm. And we used to live in Apple Valley, Minnesota. It was a bad storm. It was literally 20 below outside. And I was supposed to be at Mayo Clinic at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, I get up at 5 and I start going because it's a storm. It's going to take extra time. They had actually called my home and told my wife, tell them not to come. It's too cold. Yeah. I was already in their library. So I had what normally would have been a half-hour interview with the dean. I had two deans for an hour apiece. Wow. And we just talked, kind of like we're talking here. Yeah. They said, what's your story? What's your bag? Yeah. What are you doing? One of them said, you haven't taken physics yet. How'd you score so high on the physics? I said, you know what I did? I took a physics book. I took all the problems out. I put them on 3x5 cards. The problem on the front, answer on the back. I memorized the entire physics book. Wow. Took me a year and a half. They thought that was crazy. By the time I left, I felt so positive I was in. I was singing. I rolled down the window 20 below, and I just said, I'm in. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. Congratulations.
So med school at Mayo.
Yeah, med school at Mayo Clinic, one of the top tier schools in the country. Very competitive. Yeah. I got in. My first day in medical school was fascinating. I walked up to the anatomy building, put my hands on the wall, and I didn't pray to it, but I said, man, I'm here. Yeah. I've arrived. And it was, nonstop from there.
How old were you?
Oh gosh, I was 30, maybe 35. So I was the grandpa of the group.
Yeah.
And, it was really skirting with aging there. I'm starting to lose neurons.
So you're fulfilling your goals.
I got my goal.
And that's so important. I talk about goals in the same way. You write them down and you can get them. You got to write them down and you got to be disciplined and you got to stay on it.
Same thing. Yeah. And I look back at my mom, grandpa, and I go, what were their goals? What? And I asked my mom about that. I said, why did you leave the reservation with your Indian people? You know nobody. You left everything. Yeah. She said something really interesting to me. She said, I knew if I didn't, you would never have a chance for education. So her goal was not for herself. It was for her kids, for her next generation. That's kind of what we're doing here. I mean, the goals I have now, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story and how I got here, but essentially what I'm doing now is reliving the goal. It's played out in a different way. So I'm a doctor. I become a physician. I'm in private practice.
Did you do residency at Mayo?
I did. No, I didn't. I did it in Wisconsin in a community-based hospital. And then I joined the military, and I did a lot of training in the military. So combat casualty care. I went to the Flight Surgeon Academy in the Army and became an Army flight surgeon. I was always interested in aviation as a kid. It just fascinated me that you could get an airplane off the ground that with those little skinny wings,
Yeah.
you know, and the thing weighs a ton.
How'd you get from Mayo to the Army? What were your thoughts there?
When I was at Mayo, well, you got to pay for school at Mayo, and it wasn't cheap.
Right.
But I had money saved up, and I thought, well, I can make it, but it's not very comfortable. So the Navy and the Army had scholarship programs, and I looked at them, and they both said, well, you're kind of old. I said, I'm not that old. I'm only 35, 36. They said, well, we'd have to get a waiver and this and that and all this other kind of stuff. By the time we got all the paperwork done, they said, we can give you a scholarship, but it might work out better if you did something else. So I said, well, come on. They said, nah, not today. So they let the military scholarships go to the younger generation, which was fine. But I had enough interest in the military mission, especially military aviation, that I looked at it and pursued it. When Desert Storm 1 broke out, I actually went down to enlist as a physician and said, you need me? They said, yes, we do. By the time we got all the paperwork done, the war was over.
Wow.
Remember Desert Storm? It went fast.
6 days or
yeah, it was like the 7-day war in Israel. I mean, the thing went so fast. By the time we were done, they said, well, we'll keep your app on file. I said, okay. And I think it was a year, 2 years later, I said, well, let's just complete it. And I joined the Army National Guard in Iowa. And then I went to all the Army schools that were available to me and got a lot of training there.
Desert Storm was Schwarzkopf, General
Schwarzkopf, yeah.
He had a shotgun under his bed and he slept in a cot.
Yeah, that's right.
Next to the briefing room. I remember him. He was amazing.
Well, he's written a couple of books about it and leadership, things like that.
Yeah.
But so I'm in the Iowa National Guard and I get this training and I work out of Camp Dodge. I'm in the cavalry. I get my go to the Flight Surgeon Academy, become a flight surgeon. And during that time, the Rwanda War breaks out.
Yeah.
And this is one where they had I don't know if your readers are probably, or your listeners probably remember this. Time magazine ran an article and they quoted a missionary and the missionary said, all the devils are not in hell. They're in Rwanda. Yeah. And USA Today ran an article that day and I read it. Actually, I was in the ER and I read it. It said, we need doctors desperately. There was a side panel, so call this number. So I kind of looked around the emergency room and I had actually worked on a little girl that same day and fortunately was able to save her life. And one of the doctors said, do you know what you did? I thought I made a mistake. He said, no. You gave her 70 plus years. Think about it. And I was reading the USA Today article and something came to me. And I to this day, I just think it was the Spirit of the Lord saying, who's taking care of these kids? Yeah. And the answer was nobody.
Well, something was calling you to go to Rwanda.
Exactly. I mean, and so I called that number and they said, well, this is on a Friday, I remember. They said, well, we'll send you a ticket. Can you be there on Monday? I said, well, no, because I got another week's work scheduled. I went home, told my wife what I was thinking. I said, you got all these refugee kids, these families. It's devastating. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And she said, well, if you feel the Lord leading you, you better go. So we did. I called him up. I went.
And that was all about retaliation. Somebody was killed, and then they just started.
Hutus and the Tutsis went at it. One was in power, one was not. Somebody got killed, and then it's a retaliatory war.
They started just killing people.
It's almost like the Civil War. There were brothers fighting brothers, families fighting families, killing each other. The estimates were over 1 million refugees.
This summer, we were in Tanzania on safari.
Yeah.
And I got to know a lot of the locals. They're great.
They're great people.
They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I never had so much fun with people.
Yeah.
Those guys. Yeah. And, I think the average salary, I was asking one of them, what do you get for driving and whatever, it's like $500 to $1,000 a month, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he's trying to buy a house or build one with his wife. He's got 2 kids. He says it takes 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, people build their house one room at a time.
Yeah, we start with this, we go here. If I
you
can
start
afford
with a bedroom, build a garage, put a little kitchen on.
So when you hear that kind of stuff, you go, "I'm here in the United States. How
Oh, we
blessed are
got so much largesse. You know,
We're so spoiled. We don't know it though. We take
don't
it for
know
granted.
We don't know it.
You can't take it for granted.
Well, and here's one of the other things when I was there. So I sign up. I go to Rwanda. I'm assigned a refugee camp. I'm the only doctor in the refugee camp, in Dosho refugee camp. You can look it up online. Big, large army tent. Got 300 plus ex-combatants laying in the mud and the dirt on a grass mat, literally. There's 2 or 3 of these tents. So I go up and down the rows and I tag people. I go, well, this one needs an amputation tomorrow. This one needs one today. This one needs this. This one needs that. And one of the decisions I made was, to all these people over here that got cholera, you got to get them out of here. You got to put them in a separate tent. If we put them in a separate tent, 80% of those people died because we didn't have any medicine. So people were fearful of me coming by and tagging them with, the cholera, the black button of cholera. I said, no. We have to sacrifice these people in order to save the entire tent. And that they understood in kind of a military term. So I'm doing the operations. I'm doing little amputations. It's an old Catholic schoolhouse there. We got nothing but a table and a window, no light. Somebody has to hold the flashlight, and another person has to shoo the flies away in the middle of the operation. So I'm doing a number of these. At the end of the day, an older fellow walks up, the oldest guy in the camp. I think he was 60 some odd years old. I used to give away an Army MRE, meals ready to eat, for every operation. That was their post-op nutrition plan. So the guy says, I want an MRE. I said, well, you have to have an operation, through translator. And he said, well, he holds his arm up and he says, doctor, cut. I said, translator, tell him it has to be medically necessary. We can't just cut off his arm. He holds it up again and he said, it is necessary. I go, well, I just had a Brugger's bagel, right? How easy is that? Here's a guy begging to have one MRE in exchange for his arm. So at the end of the day, a couple hours later, I sneaked an MRE to him under my shirt, walked over and gave it to him. And he just held his hand over his heart. And he said, Asante Sana. And it's just amazing that when we go to leave the camp, several of the soldiers that I had taken their legs off wanted to talk to me. And one of them said, I still hurt. I said, I'm sorry. I don't have any more medicine. There's no more pain medicine. He said, no, I hurt in here in my heart. I said, well, I don't have medicine for that. And then I said, interesting. You know what pops in my mind? My grandfather, Psalm 23. And it was almost like, well, read him Psalm 23.
Yeah.
So we had these little French New Testaments that have Psalm 23. I said, well, here's what you need. This is medicine. Yeah. I opened it up, read Psalm 23, and everybody's listening. I'm just going, I didn't come here to preach.
Right.
But it ended up, the medicine that they needed the most was in the scripture, the Psalm 23.
Tell us about the lady you talked about that had a bacterial infection or an infection and you had to amputate, but she said no with the baby. Yeah, the same camp. There was a woman there with a baby she was trying to suckle. And this baby had to be, less than 6 months old. And she had gone down to get some water down by the river about 100 yards away. And the insurgents shot her. Bullet went through her arm, through her deltoid muscle in the side of her chest, underneath her breast, tunneled its way out through her sternum. And she hadn't had any surgery, any medicine, anything, and nothing to eat. So she's just laying there in the dirt trying to suckle this baby. And so I found her like the second day. And I said, I have to operate on your arm and I have to take your breast off because the infection is killing you. And the translator is telling her all this. And she says, no. I said, you don't understand. If I don't do the operation, you're going to die. She says, but if I die without my arm and my breast, how will I hold my baby in heaven? And I just said, oh, gosh. Now what do you do?
She was so sick and so dehydrated, she couldn't even make milk.
Mm.
She was holding that baby up to a dry nipple. 2 days, she died. Well, I took the baby. Now what do I do? This is the only baby in the camp. About a mile away, or less than a mile away, there's another physician from a Japanese group, humanitarian group. And all he did was, he delivered babies and he took care of kids. I said, we got this kid up here. Well, I took the baby over him, and somebody had given me literally almost $100,000 worth of amoxicillin and medicines. I took the whole lot, and I said, if you take the medicine, will you take the baby? He said, sure. Wow. So we took the baby over. I don't know what happened to the baby. Right. I'm assuming the baby went on and lived. Well, you don't know. Those are struggles that, with people here, we get up in the morning, we run around, we have our coffee, we're late for work, and we start screaming and yelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so if you had to sum up Rwanda, what did you learn there? The suffering, the misery, faith, perseverance, what would you sum up?
I think the big lesson for me was, there's suffering enough to go around everywhere you look. But in the midst of suffering, if people are willing, God will call them to the suffering to alleviate it. Now, what happened to all those people I took care of? Did they go on and live a happy life? I don't know. That's really not the point. The point is I responded. Other people responded. The guy who says, I heard in my heart, what does he need? Yeah, sure, he needs the Lord. He needs Psalm 23. And it was a matter of saying, are you going to pay attention to the call I give you and go somewhere that's very uncomfortable? I'd never even heard of Rwanda. I didn't know anything about those. In fact, one guy said, why are you here? I said, it's kind of my war too. He said, it is? I said, well, yeah, you're a human. I'm a human. If you're struggling, I'm struggling. If I have a way to relieve your struggling, that's my responsibility to do that. And that's what I did. And that was the big lesson. I can do things way beyond my imagining was the big lesson there.
How many people do you think you saved their lives?
Oh,
you
in the hundreds.
And you never know what they went out
and
followed them through
you don't
their
know.
lives.
I don't. You
don't know.
I don't know.
But
one mama came up to me after we saved her baby's life, and she came up at the very end a month later, and she wanted me to hold her baby, and we took a Polaroid picture. She broke down in tears. We gave her the picture. Now, I don't know. That little baby might, she might be a congresswoman in one of the African states. I don't know. She might be the head of one of the countries.
Right. You don't know, do you?
You don't know, but what you do know is if you do nothing, nothing happens.
Right.
But if you go, then God opens doors. Whether it's to live another 3 days or 10 days or 300 days, or whether it's to be the president of a country or a leader of a church, you don't know.
So now the next step is Iraq, transition.
I come back. I do a number of these kind of
trips.
missions in Bosnia and Kosovo and different areas, some similar experiences. And then the Iraq War breaks out, and I'm called up to active duty, of course. And I go, and we're there, and I'm with a local 109th Medical in Iowa, which is a medical. We take care of incidents and accidents, we call it. Well, the first thing that happens is there's a net call for somebody that has my kind of experience in international affairs, building hospitals, doing this kind of stuff. And out popped my name. And General Sanchez, who was the commander of the coalition forces, previews this stuff, said, I want the guy up here to work for me. So I'm only on the ground 2 weeks, and I leave the 109th and I go to Baghdad on a C-130 helicopter to join the general staff. And I go, what am I doing up here? I'm a little kid from Iowa. What do I know? I'm a major at the time. I'm not even a senior medical officer. I'm just a medical officer. And he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to help me rebuild the medical establishment in Iraq.
Wow.
I go, wow. How do you do that? Talk to the wrong guy again.
Yeah.
But no one else has got the set of skills that I had developed over the years and years and years of doing this international kind of work. He says, no, you're the man. You meet this colonel and this one, and they'll help you do your stuff. So we began. And then within my first tour, we rebuilt the medical school, the dental school, the veterinary school, opened up a graduate school of nursing, all within the span of a year. I actually had a collaboration with the University of Nebraska to send some of their doctors over to do a couple lectures and money and assets for a nursing program. And they did it. Wow. They packed up, they came over. We had them there in Iraq and that's in northern sections of Iraq and Kurdistan up in that area.
What were the docs like in Iraq?
It was a difficult situation for them. Middle of the war. Some of the older docs were well-trained, had been trained in Europe, as a matter of fact. They leave Iraq, go to Europe or go to other places and train. It was devastating on the young docs because during Saddam's reign, once he started in sincerity about 10 years before we got there, he wouldn't let any of the doctors out of the country for fear they'd leave. Mm. They want to go to medical meetings, educational seminars. No way, you're not going. When doctors graduated from their medical school, his minister of health would hold their medical school diplomas in trust. He'd put them in the drawer, lock them up. They weren't allowed to have them for fear they'd leave the country. Well, of course you'd leave the country. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
And they did anyway. You know, they managed to sneak out and get out of there, as did other professionals, engineers, musicians, architects. The professional class basically said, we're out of here. And a lot of them ended up in Jordan and surrounding countries. So one of the very difficult things that we had right away is I had to identify, if you're going to rebuild medical infrastructure, which we did, you have to start with their doctors. And part of that is we had to undertake a large training effort to introduce, massive amounts of training, essentially taking 3 years of residency training, poured into 1 year, and help those doctors understand, okay, we're on fast track here. Here's what we need to know. Here's your new books. We bought equipment, we bought training facilities, you name it. And at the end of the first, I'll remember this, we wanted to have the first Baghdad International Medical Conference in like 15 years. So we designed it. And the word got out among all the doctors who were having this, because they're all invited. The Surgeon General of the United States was going to be there. The Army Surgeon General was going to be there. All the medical officers were going to be there who had specialty training, and all the Iraqis. Well, word got out. Guess what? Insurgents put explosives in the podium.
Oh.
And the day before, we had the bomb crew go through and sweep all the seats, everything, and they found the podium full of C4. And they were just waiting to blow us all up. Of course, we canceled the conference. We had it somewhere else, and it wasn't nearly as big. But those are the risks you run for changing a country.
Right. Were they trained pretty well? I mean, their residency and their medical program?
Yeah, they were trained pretty well, and all they needed was really someone to come alongside them to encourage them. Every doctor needs training. You don't start out knowing everything. So every doctor alive has to be encouraged and trained properly. And, we have a system, we have residents, we have fellows, we have medical students. Same thing there. When it got to the residency level, it kind of broke down a bit because a lot of the professionals that normally would train young doctors left the country. Or they didn't have any money to do it. They just had no money. Saddam spent all his money building war machines and palaces.
Wow. Were you ever in a palace?
I was.
I bet that was something.
Our main office was one of his palaces. One of the engineers estimated he had 40 palaces to the tune of about $6 to $7 billion apiece. If he'd have taken one palace down and spent the money on medical infrastructure, he could have had like the Mecca of medicine in the Middle East.
Wow, that's amazing. So you built the hospital complex up in Iraq. Now what's next? You want to talk about being a soldier and a doctor and
let me talk a little bit about. I'll talk about an engagement because I think it's very insightful as to. I wasn't just a doctor. Some people have this misunderstanding that you go and you sit in a hospital the whole time. You don't. The only true non-combatants in the military are the chaplains. They don't carry a weapon. All doctors carry weapons, and all doctors will engage. All right. When I got there, within a few months, I burned my Red Cross card. I didn't burn it. I ripped it in half because if somebody finds me, they're going to shoot me anyway. Right. So it really didn't count. Well, if you're a doctor and you don't have one of those cards, that means you're a full combat engaging soldier, which I was. One of my missions at the commodity warehouse went off like this. So the United Nations and several other nations would give the food for oil program and medicine for oil program. And the medicine was stored in these large warehouses. So medicine, antibiotics, cardiac medicines, even medical equipment. When Saddam was taken down, the people that were left behind in those warehouses were still loyal to him, but they controlled all these assets. And what was happening is they were selling them off to hospitals at a fair premium and making a lot of money. Well, we found out about it, and we put the kibosh on this operation. I was tasked with a mission to take all the medicines from this commodity warehouse and distribute them to 3 or 4 different Iraqi hospitals. And an infantry squad was supposed to meet me there. Well, they didn't show up. So it was myself and one other officer and a sergeant and a private. That's it, 4 people. Well, there are 100 people in this compound, this commodity warehouse compound. About 20 minutes before I got there, they had gotten a fight over distributing the money off of stuff they'd sold. Now, we're talking millions of dollars. We're not just talking a couple bucks. So they were trying to divide up literally over $1 million. Who gets what? About 100 some odd Iraqis there, some with weapons, some not. They had already shot 6 Iraqis who they disagreed with. So I come into the compound. I'm supposed to take charge. And there's all this fervor and people screaming and yelling. So I said, well, I don't understand what's going on. They said, well, we killed these guys because they wanted too much money. I said, who's the officer in charge? Who's the leader of the group? In essence, I said, who's the old man? Because I was the old man, and I wanted to talk to the gray hair. So they get the warehouse manager. He comes in. And sure enough, he's about my age. And I'm 56 at the time, 56 years old. And we both have gray hair. And he talks to me, and he says, I know what you're here for, but you can't leave. We're going to kill you. And it got real quiet. And I looked at him like I'm looking at you, and I said, you know what? You can do that, but I will kill you. And I said, in a short amount of time, there's a company of infantry soldiers going to show up, and they're going to kill everybody here. I said, what do you want to do? They didn't know what to do. Now, I said, we're the leaders. We're the old men. We're the wise ones. We cannot let anybody else die today. I took off my helmet. On one side of my helmet, I have a picture of my kids at home. On the other side, I have a little brochure that has Psalm 23 written on it. And I pulled out my kids. I said, you got kids? He says, yes, I have kids. I said, I got kids. Do you want your kids to have no father today? He said, no. I said, I don't either. How about these other people? They got kids? Oh, yes, they have kids. I said, why would we send all these people home dead? And then I took the Psalm 23 out. I said, do you know Psalm 23? He said, yes, I know it. I said, that's the Psalm of David. I said, the first line, you know? He said, yes, I know. The Lord is my shepherd. I said, today, we're the shepherds. We have to lead the flock. If we don't, everybody will die. So he said, yes, I agree. Nobody will die. Well, took another half hour for the infantry guys to show up. But in the meantime, we found the $6 million, literally $6 million that were in Iraqi currency. And we recovered the shooters who had killed the other 6 guys. They were hiding in the warehouse. And we're getting ready to leave. We got the money, and we do have the shooters because they're going to be in jail. And the old man comes up to me again. He says, "Doctor, thank you. But when you leave, those guys out there will kill you. I said, again, I said, you see now we have the 30 cal on the Humvee. Do not, tell them, do not pull the trigger. I said, you may kill me, you may not. But I will guarantee you, if you fire one bullet, everybody will die. I said, those guys are not the shepherds. You and I are. And he said, okay. And we got out.
Wow. And he knew Psalm 23.
Psalm 23. He knew it.
And
A lot of what's interesting there is there's a lot of readers of the Old Testament there. And a lot of them know that. Everybody knows Psalm 23 throughout the world.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Lord is my shepherd, and the one that says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you're with me. Yeah. Everybody knows that. So it doesn't matter where I've been all over Central America, Mexico, Eastern Europe, Middle East. Everybody knows that psalm. That's fantastic. Psalm 23.
Tell us about how you got injured in Iraq. Was that an RPG?
Yeah, it was actually a missile attack, and we're going from point A to point B to do some medical clearance and evacuations. And one of the few times I wasn't in the helicopter on ground transport, and a missile attack hit right in front of us, and the driver, rather than drive into the missile, the big hole in the middle of the road, he turns the vehicle to the left and hit a blockade, and we went straight up in the air, and you could hear our bones crunch when we came back down. I mean, our spines just went crunch. So I have an L4-5 fracture. My hands went through the windshield, and I busted 2 shoulders, 1 back, 1 arm, but I'm all right. And that was the 3rd tour. I got injured the first tour, but some orthopedic stuff. We patched up and went back. By the time I got to the 3rd tour, I was injured enough to where I had to be medevaced back, like the soldiers I had sent home. My doctor there looked at me and said, yeah, enough is enough. You got to go back home. You got to get patched up, because I just had too many injuries. I couldn't function.
Between your 2nd and 3rd tour, you were coming home for Christmas, and they decided to deploy you. You had to call your daughter.
Yeah.
And she said she wanted to call somebody.
Yeah. Well,
say no.
Of course, nobody fights a war alone. If you're a soldier, right, you got a family. You got a mom, you got a dad, you got brothers, you got sisters. And people talk about soldiers getting PTSD. How about the families? Every time they turn on CNN or the news, something's blowing up.
Right.
And the question is, where's dad? Where's mom? Where's my sister? Where's my brother? So I had to go back 2nd tour, and I had been injured already. So I tell my kids, and my daughter, who's, 35 years old at the time, she's a special ed teacher in Washington, D.C. She gets mad. She's, you're not going back. You've done enough. You're going to get hurt. I said, honey, I've already been hurt. She says, I'm serious. I'm going to call who's in charge anyway. Mm-hmm. I said, well, that'd be the president. She says, well, I'm calling him. I'm going to tell him off. I said, I hope you do, but I still got to go. So I still went, and I still got injured.
9 months?
Yeah.
Another 9 months?
Another 9 months. My 2nd tour, I was there, and then I was ready to come home, actually, on my freedom flight home. And I got a call from the Pentagon, from the officer there, Simon's officer, saying, you got to stay in place. We got a whole battalion coming in that doesn't have a flight surgeon. I said, well, surely you got another flight surgeon in the U.S. Army. They said, yeah, we do, but not with the experience you got. And they got none. So stay put. So I extended, that became my 3rd tour then. And I got injured during that tour. One of the things happened, and I can leave the Army stuff with this story, because it's actually very poignant and very, it's not a Christmas story, but it takes place at Christmas time. So in that context, let me just tell you what it is. So I'm a flight surgeon for a group, and it's a combat interdiction team. We fly Cobras, and we do some real serious high op tempo type of missions. All right. And you can fly so many hours, and then you're supposed to rest at the rest work cycle. Well, we've been way past that resting period, and we had to extend our working cycle and our flying time, according to demands of the mission. So we did. And during that extension, there was two helicopters went up north to do a mission, and they were doing some evasive maneuvers to avoid fire from the ground, small arms fire. And one of the helicopters crashed into the other one midair and came down. And two of the pilots in the Cobra were killed. I was supposed to actually be in the Black Hawk with the other passengers, but I wasn't. The commander said, no, you stay here, do flight following this time. So I did. Well, then we went up to Mosul. We had to fly about a half hour up to Mosul and do the accident investigation. And I write about it in my book. It's devastating, of course, because the two gentlemen that got killed, I was just playing football with them on the tarmac a week before Thanksgiving. They were supposed to go home for Christmas. Before they were deployed, months before they were deployed, the youngest of the two, a young officer, a young lieutenant, his grandma went out and bought 500 bandanas, camouflage bandanas, and she had it inscribed with Psalm 91:1. Those who abide in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Wow. Every soldier in that battalion, including me, had one of those bandanas. Wow. And one of the other soldiers asked me, why'd that guy have to die? Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. He was a young Christian man. I said, because he signed a commitment to sacrifice his life.
Right.
He signed the line just like every soldier. That's a short answer.
Right.
The other one you have to ask God about. But I said, I don't know. But I'll tell you what. You know what? There's 500 soldiers here that have Psalm 91:1 burned into their heart. And they know it. Yeah. And they'll never forget it.
Those are stories nobody hears.
Yeah, and now your readers have heard the story.
Right.
They know the story.
Right.
And this is Christmas time.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go home.
Family.
And their family, I don't know how they would have rejoiced at Christmas time, but their grandma rejoiced in the psalm that she put on that bandana. And you can better believe every one of your listeners is going to look up Psalm 91:1.
As a doctor, have you witnessed miracles?
I think I have. Some of those situations where you go, look, here, I'll tell you a miracle. Yeah. There's an old guy, and old, I mean old, like 70 some odd, like my age now. He comes up to me in Iraq. He's carrying his kid. He wants me to take care of the kid. Well, we don't do pediatrics, it's a war zone. And we don't even have hospitals. We don't have any pediatricians there. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at there's another officer. Okay, I'll look at your kid. Well, long story short, I find out this kid's got leukemia. Well, so where's his mother? Well, she got shot. And the father's trying to explain to me, and he sounds like this. And I turned to the translator. I don't understand. What's he trying to say? Well, he's only got half a tongue. And I look at him. He's got no thumbs. Well, what happened? I said, what happened to him? And the translator, this is like 5 minutes later, she said, he stole a chicken in order to feed his kid. Saddam found out about it, or his henchmen found out about it. They cut off his tongue because he lied about the chicken, and then he took his thumbs away so he'd never steal again. I said, well, now he's really productive. Yeah. I took the child. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fly this child to Italy to a group of pediatricians. They'll take care of him. And I said, I will pray for your child the same way I pray for my girls at home with the Psalms. He looks at me and he does the same thing, hand over his heart. She says, not Asante Sani in Iraqi. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then I said, tell him that I'm the doctor I didn't capture Saddam's sons, but I put them in a box and I delivered them to the grave. When I told him that, the translator translated, he lit right up. You know what he was looking for? Justice. You know what he got in the end? Justice. The guys that tore his thumbs off and took his tongue out, he would never in a million years imagine, I couldn't imagine I'd ever meet this guy.
Yeah.
Because frankly, I said, I had already said, look, God, I don't want to be bothered with this child. Well, I'm a combat surgeon. What do you want me to do? I'm not a pediatrician. But I took the space and the time. It was almost like God said, stop what you're doing. Make some space for this person in front of you, whatever their need is, take care of it. And I did, and that was the result.
So you faced death, right? I mean, you've seen it. You've been close to it.
Yeah.
People pass away. What's that like? Tell us. We're all going to pass away. We're all going to die.
Well, yeah, and the older I get, the more I realize I'm getting there.
Yeah.
There's two things. It can be discomforting, but it can also be comforting in that struggles come to an end. Not that we're all frustrated, to death, but that the suffering we have here is only for a while, and it is for a reason. And I think one of the reasons is, I'll give you another example. So I came home, I recovered from my injuries. In one of the operations, I got air bubbles in my head, had a stroke. I lost my career. Bang. It took less than 30 seconds for me to have a stroke and lose my career in an operating room. And for more than a year, I almost like a fly circling around, chasing itself. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I can't do anything. What's the point?
You had an aneurysm, right?
I had an aneurysm, and the doctors tried to take care of it, and they got air in my head, in the system. I go, well, I've lost everything. I told my therapist, and I had PTSD and I'm finished with my 3 tours at this time. Okay. I'm actually want to get back to my 4th tour, but I have this stroke from an aneurysm. And it was multifocal, a lot of different levels. I woke up at the level of a 3rd grader. I couldn't read, I couldn't stand, couldn't talk, couldn't understand people. And I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I always just say I'm nobody. And the therapist say, that's not true. You are somebody. I said, well, who am I? She said, well, we'll find that person again. The world's biggest lie is that we're nobody. The world's biggest lie is that you're worthless, like my grandfather. The truth of the matter is, I'm worth the sacrifice of God's Son. Wow. Oof, that's got to stop you in your tracks, because all of a sudden you go, wait a minute. If that's true, whatever I'm feeling about myself, as hard as it is, whatever I'm missing, I might be missing the bigger part of the point, the puzzle. And that part is God has a reason for that stuff too. Also. So I'm not just a doctor. I'm not just a soldier. I'm not just this guy who went to medical school. I'm a person who now, through transformation, serves other needs. And I was giving a lecture several years ago over at the university in Grand Rounds. And my cardiologist came up afterward and he said, now don't take this personally, but you're a better doctor now than you were before. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, you're reaching more people. It's a different kind of healing.
Right.
And that's the kind of miracle stuff. That's the kind of stuff you deal with in life that as ER docs and combat docs, you have to deal with all the time. Like these 2 guys that gave their life. Why? So I could remember Psalm 91:1? Well, you could just pointed it to me. Yeah, but you couldn't have burned it into my heart and my life. His entire community in Georgia knows that psalm. And everywhere that story is told, people will remember it. It's just like that guy offers his arm to get cut off for a meal. Everybody goes, that's pretty drastic. Yes, it is. And in that reflection, we can go, I'm pretty blessed. And then what it causes me to do is to take whatever time I have left, and I always I play a game with God. I say, Lord, look, I'm writing books. I got to write 6 more. It takes me 6 years, so that's 36 years. Doesn't quite work that way, but the point is, use me with the time I have and let me be joyful in it. And I think that's where we're at today.
Yeah, you can't go back. We're here.
You
today.
can't go back.
We're right here, right
Yeah,
now.
you can't go back. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
And everybody's got something.
Yep.
Everybody gets a cancer.
Yep.
You lose a kid. You do this.
Yep.
You lose a business. Everybody has something.
Everybody has a story.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you're nothing.
Right.
It absolutely means that if you're willing, God will pour those Psalms into your heart and burn them in there so your life has meaning.
So you woke up as a third grader with a stroke.
Yeah.
And you rehabbed your back, what'd you say, 70%, 75%?
75%, yeah.
Right. How did you do that mentally
Oof.
every day? Because you're not only had to train your mind, your physical.
Yeah. I always feel like, I think I even say in my book, I felt like my body abandoned me. My body did, my mind did. And I look around and I when the Army said, you're done, I felt the Army abandoned me. So I'm alone. Now, what do you do with that? Well, that's a terrible place to be. But you have enough faith and enough belief that the Lord has something for you, that you wake up and you do one step at a time. They always just say, okay, you got to walk from here to here. It's 20 yards. I'd say, I can't do it. They say, yeah, you're right, but you can walk one step. So you do the 1 and 2 and you fall over. And I used to. I fall over all the time. Fall over. Well, get back up. The therapist, I'm driving them crazy. They're driving me crazy.
Yeah. They
But
push you.
it's not a big chunk thing. You don't become a successful businessman overnight. You got to do all the things. You're young. You don't have the business you have today. And you build things a step at a time. So what the rebuilding was, and I'll tell this to your listeners, everybody that goes to war is changed. There's no way you can go to war and have those experiences I had or any soldier has and come back unchanged. I think it's accurate to say everybody has some degree of what we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, is it disordering? Is it disabling? It can be. Doesn't mean it has to be. And the reason I put it that way is people have to work the plan, the recovery plan. And it's one of these, whether it's your body, stroke, PTSD, it's a step at a time process. If you look too far, and I used to look too far down the road saying, well, I could do this, and this. I used to jump out of helicopters, get guys, pick them up, put them on my back, run them to the ER. But I can't do that anymore. So I must be nobody. Not true. I can still move my leg. Well, so let's move the leg. And we did that. You know how long it took? 8 years.
I've heard that after a year, you're done.
Yeah.
And that's not true, is
the
it?
teaching that I had in medical school and used to be a paradigm of stroke recovery, they'd look at you 1 year from your stroke. Whatever you look like, that's what you got. Not true. But the fallacy in the argument was, well, if you're not going to improve, let's not do anything. So they didn't do anything. Of course, nobody improved. My therapist, a young Harvard-trained neuropsychologist at the VA, brilliant guy. He said, well, we've never had a physician in here before that we've treated like this, so it's new ground for us. What do you want to do? I said, well, what do you mean? What do I want to do? I want to go back and be a doctor. Well, you can't exactly do that. Not now. He said, well, let's start. So he started. And they would do exercises. Now, some of the stroke recovery exercises, literally, you put the round peg in a square hole and the blue, match the blue and the blue and the green and things like this, exercises like that. They were very creative. What they did was they took medical things. They even take EKGs and say, read this. Of course, I couldn't. Take me a half hour to read an EKG, which I used to read inside of 6 seconds. Patient's dead. Now what do I do? But they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. Now, in 1 year, I had a 3% improvement. I go, well, 3%, that's something. It's not nothing. They said, well, it's in the standard error of the mean. It's not real. I said, well, but what if we did another 6 months or another year? Okay, we'll do it. I had nothing but time. I'm not going anywhere. I can't do anything. I'm technically still in the Army at the time. They said, well, let's try. I said, yes, let's. Guess what? End of the second year, now I'm at like 11%. I said, well, wait a minute. 11's not insignificant.
Right.
So something's going on here. Same thing, third, fourth. If you chart it on a plot, my therapist charted on a plot, when we get to year 4, everything's kind of moving up just gradually, not a whole lot. And not enough to where I could be a doctor. About year 4 or 5, it takes off almost vertically. I say, that's really interesting. And here's what we discovered. It takes a minimum of about 2 years of stroke therapy to start regaining significant amounts of recovery. There's a few people that do it faster, some do it slower, but it takes that much effort. And that's against the old paradigm that says 1 year you're cooked. Actually, most people that have strokes are in their late 60s, 70s. You got on Medicare, what do you get? About 3 months of rehab. It's way too short and way too limited.
So everybody that's been in combat or anybody that's been in the service probably has some type of symptoms of PTSD.
I think they do.
Do you think, what helped you? Therapy? Did you do any psychedelics, or what are your thoughts on psychedelics with veterans that have been?
Well, they're trying it out, and I think the jury's still out on that. We'll see. It's almost too new to tell completely. There's some positive signs. There's even positive signs with beta blockers and different kinds of drugs, different classes of drugs. So we'll see. That's one approach. The other approach, which actually I found more helpful, and I never did do the psychedelics or beta blockers. So the only approach was tried on me was counseling, either one-on-one or a very, very small group. One of the difficulties in it, and I was like this when I came home. I said, "Well, that's not for me. That's not me. I don't have that." Quit bugging me about it. And everybody, they'd ask me about it. I said, "That's not me. I'm a tough guy."
Yeah.
You know, the paradigm in the military is you're tough. If you have that, you're weak. Well, that's not true at all. I say again, you can't send anybody to war and have them go through the crucible of combat and come back and claim that they're not affected by it.
Right.
Everybody has a moment where they're almost killed or they see their friend killed, like I did. And that, unless you're a robot, those things affect you and they burn into your heart and your mind. So you deal with that. I used to blame myself for the fact that my 2 pilots got killed. I said, I should have grounded them before that. I used to carry that around a lot. And it's just like, if I only would have done, really?
Right.
And but what if I had done this other thing? See, maybe things would have turned out differently. Really? We're all there for the same thing. We all signed the same line. So for me, it was, and this went on for about a year. No, I don't have, you're not treating me. I don't need it. Go talk to somebody else who needs it. But they just kept chipping away. And one of the things the therapist said to me one day, she said, draw me a picture of the most horrible thing you saw over there. I looked at her and I shook my head. I said, I think I said, are you out of your mind? She said, no. So draw it. Why won't you draw it? I said, okay, I'll draw it. So I went home and I drew a picture of a helmet with a hole in it of a patient I took. What patient? There was no patient. All I had left was a helmet with a hole in it. There was no patient. So I drew that helmet with a hole in it and I gave it to her. She started crying. I started crying. And stuff like that, you go, what's the nidus that opens somebody up? Well, you don't know. And it takes a therapist who can kind of get into your skin, or it takes another combat vet who says, like I'm saying to you, I've been there. Don't give me your baloney that you're not affected. I've been there. I got through it. You know, and some of the younger vets, unfortunately, either don't get the service, they get mad at the VA, something goes wrong, and they go off and they turn to alcohol and drugs and addictive behaviors. Those are catastrophes because, you know, look at the suicide number. We have more than 20 a day. And we can't explain them all. can't blame them all on PTSD, but we do know that we're not addressing it as we should. The VA has resources, and part of it is it's on the vet saying, "Okay, I'm willing to take the first step." It's kind of like an alcoholic saying, "I'm an alcoholic.
I need to get help.
I need to get help. I will entertain sitting down, having a coffee, and at least talking about the subject, and go from there." And that's where I'll leave it, because I think there's enough veterans out there who probably haven't sought care to say, yeah, that guy might make sense.
Good. Well, I usually finish, to wrap up the podcast, I usually finish with three things, 3 H's. Who was your hero? Tell me about your biggest hardship and that biggest highlight. Those 3 things. No order, however you want to take them. Hero, hardship, highlight.
Well, I'm going to say the hero is my grandpa, because I'm actually writing a book about him and what he would have gone through as a young man at 18, going to a government boarding school.
Right.
And being labeled as worthless, but then coming out, and obviously he wasn't. So what did he do? He dug in, he built a home, he worked, he provided, and he built a future for me and my mom. He built a future for Mom, who built a future for me. I never heard him once say, boy, I wish I could get even, with those people who put me in that school. And it wasn't like he was a Christian man, but instead he would take that psalm and he just, I always see him, I see him now. He's just sitting there smoking a pipe, reading the psalm. That's amazing. And that's what I want to be, this kind of guy, that meditates on the Psalms and passes that picture on to somebody else. So that's my hero.
Okay.
Well, the best thing that ever happened to me, well, it's a cliche, but I'm going to say getting married to the wife I have, the only one I have. And
how many years?
Oh gosh, you know what? We just celebrated 53.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
On
You
our
don't hear that
50th,
much,
I was having radiation treatment for cancer, so we had to delay it. And we finally had our 53rd anniversary. We called it our 50th. And we went to Dollywood, and we took all the kids and the grandkids. We had a ball.
Good.
Yeah, we just have a ball.
53 is amazing.
Yeah, 53. And so we go, okay, we'll give our kids something to aim for.
She stood behind you.
She stood.
Whole
Well,
way, right?
I mean, I keep telling her to write her own book. And anybody that reads my book will go immediately, there's a strong woman.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom had to be terribly strong.
Right.
Her mom was a military mom. Her father was deployed. I think out of the years they were married, he was gone 13. Korea, Vietnam. She comes from a military family. Yeah, she's a hero. She's the real hero. And what was the third one?
Highlight.
Oh, the highlight.
Highlight.
One of the highlights for me is really becoming, I'm not a clinical physician anymore. I had a stroke. I lost that stuff. But here's what I've learned. It's not about all the stuff I lost. It's about the stuff I've gained and I'm gaining. So what am I gaining? So right now I have a group in my home called Spaghetti Science Group. What the heck is that? All right. So at my church, I bumped into a few grad students in biomedical science, and they were having a rough day. So a couple of years ago, I said, hey, come over to my house. I'll make spaghetti and we'll talk. And we did. And, then they invited 2 more and 2 more and 2 more. And so what I do now is I mentor graduate students, medical students, and young doctors. And I say, it's not about what you think you are right now that counts, because we know what you are right now. Okay, you're in the process of becoming something. You're learning, you're transitioning. It's what God's going to do with you out there. Now, that part you don't necessarily know, but you don't have to know it all.
Right.
You don't have to know it all. All you got to do is walk. But in the meantime, when you have a rough day, call me up, because I'll encourage you. I'll give you Psalm 91:1, or I'll give you Psalm 23, or we'll have coffee or spaghetti dinner and we'll talk. And that's what I do now. I love it. Yes. I absolutely love it.
So it's God's plan for you.
It's God's plan. Look, all the other stuff really doesn't matter. Why did I have a stroke? Well, my wife says that was God's way of slowing you down. Because if you did your fourth two, you'd probably be in a box by now.
Right.
And so what? This is fantastic. If I could do this, for the next 5 years and encourage young doctors and young PhDs to do well at what they do and do it in God's grace, then I've accomplished. I could do like Paul saying, you know what? I ran the race.
Right.
I ran the race and I finished it.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing. And man, full throttle ahead.
I think I forgot hardship. Did we do hardship?
We didn't do
I
hardship.
think we did highlight twice.
Yeah.
That's all right, though. I like both highlights.
Yeah.
What would be a hardship, you think?
Well, the hardship was losing my clinical career in my stroke. That was a hard one. Because it was my total. It wasn't 100% of my identity. It was probably 99.9. And that's a struggle because as a Christian as a young Christian physician, you go, well, wait a minute, God's supposed to be first. What's the priority here? How is that all set up? It's something we all struggle with in our careers. But the deal was when I lost it, I was so at the prime. I mean, man, I was on the pinnacle of my career, and now you got nothing. Oh, well, that's a scary place.
Wow.
But then through that. Now, the next turn of events was, okay, I got some stomach cancer from something I picked up in Iraq. Well, that wasn't nearly as bad as an adjustment because we've got treatment for that.
I found that in the companies that I've been around that my best leaders have been through the most.
Yeah.
They've been through the hardships.
They've been through the hard stuff, and they've had their share of mistakes, and they've learned from them that, we don't do it this way.
Somebody hasn't had a hardship, they're not going to be a good leader.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can't lead people through hardship if you don't understand hardship. If you haven't lost a contract, if you haven't lost a life, if you haven't lost a business or this or that or whatever, then you don't understand it. But if you take that and put it on the table and say, what can I learn from this? Where are we going from this, Lord? What do we do?
Well, keep doing what you're doing.
I will.
Obviously, God has a plan for you. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
This has just been fantastic. And
Thank you.
I think if you haven't, make sure everybody gets a copy of the book, Crossings. Austin, you can probably put it up on the screen. And it's been wonderful. Thank you for your service.
Gary, and by the way, here's a book that I'm giving all my grad students. It's called Living in the Goodness of God. It's all on Psalm 23. The whole book.
Whole book.
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, thank you. Hey, thanks again, John.
Thank you.
Yep.